Chapter 1. Calm Days and Storm Clouds. Part 4 of 4. Alexia had just returned from the daycare with the herd's 3 foals and lounged on a plastic-covered metal bench in front of the post office. The 2 fillies and 1 colt squealed with laughter as she danced them around in her kinesis. Sky was enjoying the activity far more than her siblings, causing her mother's smile to broaden. "She's a Pegasus all right. Aurora can't get enough of the air." Toon was especially happy that her fellow citizens of Trinity were quite comfortable referring to themselves as Terrans. She stopped dancing the foals in the air and settled them down onto the ground so they could run about. "It's a good feeling, to think of myself as a Terran first and pony second. Sort of how like the 3 tribes think of themselves as ponies first and foremost, instead of as separate tribes." The Alicorn had an understanding with the citizens of Trinity. While she was more than happy to play the part of princess, she made it quite clear that if she was not wearing her crown, she was not to be the subject of fawning or celebrity harassment. In her own words, "If the crown is off, I'm off the clock." The locals were willing to accommodate the unwritten rule. After all, they saw her almost on a daily basis and the glamour of having her live amongst them became a normal part of life. Yet that understanding didn't always reach pilgrims before they saw her. "I hate that word," she thought to herself. "Acting as if I'm some messiah, but the way new arrivals act towards me, there really isn't a better word to describe them." She checked her phone to see Elizabeth was still 20 minutes away. Upon putting the phone down, she saw them. Pilgrims were painfully obvious to her by now. The 7 ponies and 3 humans that were piling out of the commuter bus smacked of weary travelers. None of them have cutie marks either. Only new arrivals lack them anymore, well aside from the foal population anyway. The teal-colored Russian unicorn by the name of Yakim was exhausted and filled with energy. A paradox only possible when someone was physically tired and was exuberant at the same time. "We've done it, comrades. Princessa Alexia is here. I can feel it." His human sister smacked him with annoyance. "Would you stop calling us comrade, you stupid idiot?" The term had greatly fallen out of favor in Russia, yet Yakim used it anyway out of spite. "Comrade Ludmila. Why torment your only brother?" 3 other ponies punched Yakim to shut him up. "Help, help. I'm being repressed." His sister was getting tired of his idiocy, even if it was deliberately meant to amuse himself. Maybe he'll meet an American that rides a scooter and shouts about freedom all day. Let them kill each other. Alexia chuckled at the rough but friendly banter as she watched all of this from a distance, even if she couldn't understand the language. She mentally prepared herself to speak with them as she fully expected the Russians to zero in on her soon enough. "I hope I can get them to leave before Beth shows up." One of the immigrants saw Alexia and jabbed his companions to get their attention. "There she is. The princessa." They saw right away that they had her attention, so they huddled together to work up a plan of action. "How do we speak with her?" asked a navy blue mare. "Just walk up to her," offered her human brother Rurik. "We can't do that, Govniuk," hissed a purple stallion. "She's royalty. You think the Danish queen would let you just walk up to her? I don't see guards or a crown." "Are you sure that's her?" asked Ludmila. "Maybe the Americans don't know how to protect the royal family. They've never had one before," commented one of the other stallions. Rurik groaned in exasperation. "Durag." He adopted a pleasant expression and walked across the street to prove them all wrong. Approachable or not, he knew with children running around her hooves, that she would become hostile if he came across as belligerent. He knew right off that the silver pony was the correct person thanks to the presence of wings and a horn. He tried to remain polite, but the 1.5-year journey out of Russia had been extremely taxing. While the motherland had recently opened civil rights to its equine population, the Federal Security Service was still tailing them in particular. Mostly because some of their group had to take violent measures to escape custody more than once. "Glad my English is better than most," he thought as he closed to a respectable distance. Alexia's smile was polite, but her eyes displayed a clear warning in regards to the foals. "Ah, greetings, I am Rurik Arsov. You are Princessa Alexia, yes?" Toon did not activate her crown, and responded in a patient tone. "I am. Is there something I can do for you?" "Not for me so much. But my friends back there." He jabbed a thumb behind him. "Would love to talk with you, if only for a moment." She nodded, much to his relief. "I can spare some time." Toon could already tell her passive alicorn magic was affecting the Russian ponies. As soon as Rurik gave the signal, all 7 ran over and stopped in a semicircle with Joachim in the center. Every single one of them had expressions of admiration and respect. "Princessa Alexia. We submit ourselves to your will." He practiced that line for months to make sure his accent wouldn't color it too badly. "Why do they always do this?" The alicorn groaned internally, while keeping a pleasant expression. "Listen. I don't know what your preconceptions of me are, but I regard my royal status as a job. Not entitlement. All of you are free to do as you will, within the constraints of the law, of course." Joachim wasn't quite satisfied with that after Rurik translated. As Alexia predicted, it did much to crumble the holy pedestal pilgrims tended to bestow on her. "Is there anything you require of us?" She remained polite. "Only that if you decide to stay in Trinity, that you do everything in your power to make it better. We still have to prove to the world that long-term relations between our two species is not only possible, but also mutually beneficial." She pointed with a wing to the post office behind her. "There is an office inside there that can help you get situated with that if you like. Talk to Miss Barrymore at the front desk for more information." The human travelers thought she was far more down to earth than expected, but the alicorn's passive magic made their equine companions hang on her every word. All they saw was that the silver alicorn, who had been the reason of their flight from their homeland, was offering them an opportunity to serve her. The very thing they wanted to do. Joachim's faith was redoubled. "She grants us to not only live in the same city, but to help unite the races? She is everything I could have hoped for." He faced his companions. "Oi comrades, let's go." The other ponies waited until they were inside and out of earshot of Alexia before pounding more physical abuse on him for being distasteful. Alexia sighed and picked up Dusty in her magic to give the colt a bottle. Well, that was relatively painless. Sky and Spark were far more energetic than their brother and were actively chasing each other now that the mass of visitors had left. Toon could already tell that they were different from other foals, and not just because of their age. Violet was plagued by magic surges at least 3 times every week, and Aurora's magic tended to leave the filly weightless every now and then. Violet's first episode terrified her mother the first time it happened, thinking it was a mana flare. Thankfully Crimson was already informed of infant unicorns having random magic surges and that it was normal. What was not normal, however, was the frequency. It was a side effect to Alexia's mana flare, and Aurora's condition was potentially dangerous in its own right. Sky's bouts of weightlessness were funny the first few times until the Pegasus's magic returned to normal and she nearly hit her head on the way back down. Had Loki not been there to catch her, Sky might have suffered serious injury. Just as that thought crossed her mind, Toon noticed Aurora trip over her hooves, and instead of face planting the ground, she started to drift away into the air. Alexia kept a gentle telekinetic hold over the giggling alabaster filly as she buzzed her wings to try and fly properly. This only doubled her power and made Alexia have to put extra effort in keeping the foal from flying off. She guided the upside-down Pegasus back over so that she stopped next to her mother. "You are such a goofball, you know that." Aurora wiggled in the air to hug the silver mare. "Mama." "Daw." Alexia loved every time Sky called her that and pulled the currently weightless filly over so she could rest next to her brother. Violet propped herself up onto the bench to try and get at her sister. A familiar voice called out from the street. "I thought I'd never see the day someone calls you Mom." The silver pony looked away from her child to see Elizabeth Toon standing by the sidewalk. Alexia's grin threatened to split her face and she left the foals on the bench and dove through the air to glomp her sister. Elizabeth had only a second to brace herself against the hatchback as the alicorn collided with her. Beth! Oh, I'm so glad you finally came. It's been ages. I know, right? It had in actuality only been a few months. But when our totally understanding and accepting parents don't agree with what we like, we find ourselves not only disowned, but out of money too. That got Alexia to back off, her smile gone. They actually disowned you? You're not just saying that, are you? Elizabeth knew she had a flair for the dramatic sometimes, but her mood kept her from holding it in check. They did. I got the legal paperwork and everything to prove those two backwards assholes dropped us both from the family. Alexia's mood plummeted from the news. Oh. She knew it was her fault in the end. I'm sorry I caused all that. Aw shit. Beth knew she had screwed up. No, it's not your fault. I said some really unkind things to that witch and the topic of pony herds came up and I kinda blew up on them. They only mentioned your disownment in passing. It helped smooth out Alexia's mood, prompting Beth to continue. Besides, what the hell am I doing talking about this first thing? She bent down and gave the alicorn a proper hug this time. I'm really glad to see you, sis. The silver mare leaned into the affection. At least someone on my human family uses the proper pronouns. Beth spied the foals prancing back to their caretaker. Speaking of family. Where are those Yunjins? You didn't bring them over last time. Both of them spun around to gather up the foals, with Elizabeth picking Dusty up. Okay, Alex. I have to say this. She shrieked in girlish delight. You ponies are painfully adorable. And who's this little guy? She turned to her sister. It is a guy, right? Tinker was cradled in her left arm while she tickled his belly with the other. Toon was too busy keeping Sky from floating away again to give anything more than a simple answer. Yup, his name is Dusty Tinker. Aurora floated back over to her mother right as the Pegasus's out-of-control mana normalized and gravity took hold of her once again. His fur even makes him look a little dusty. She put the squirming colt back on the ground. Say, I got something for you. With Violet and Sky secure in her full harness, the mare looked to pick Tinker up while Beth went to the black car's trunk. She reappeared with a half-life-sized plush pony-shaped doll. Terror crept into Alexia's mind when she saw the horn, wings, azure mane, silver fur, and black ink. Oh bloody hell, she said slowly. You didn't. I did, the princess's sister replied with a snarky tone. And I've got 10 more back there. I call them ankh flank. It doesn't rhythm all that well, but I made it work. Toon saw a few people looking their way with eyes locked on the doll. She cringed deeply and yanked the doll into her magic and shoved it back into the car, eliciting a yelp of indignation from her sister. No 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 no. What the hell, Beth? Do you realize what people do to dolls? Collect or play with them, she offered. Toon threw her hooves and wings up in exasperation. Yes, play. Have you seen the internet? The last thing I need is some creep doing unspeakable acts to my image. Oh, lighten up. Those people would be doing that to you anyway. Besides, she said while opening the trunk back up. It's every little girl's dream to have a unicorn. Now they can have a plushie of a real one. Alexia made sure Dusty was not getting into trouble before giving her sister an evil eye. First off, I'm not a unicorn, nor is the doll. Second, I distinctly remember you never liking girl toys. She craned her neck to spy the Decepticon logo sticker on the car's back windshield. In fact, what was it you used to do for a certain robot? Elizabeth groaned at the coming insult and decided to beat her to the punch. That ice cream for her Starscream. The alicorn snickered derisively at Beth's discomfort. He's hot for a robot. But whatever, I'm talking about more traditional girls out there. There are already pony dolls out there, and before you think it's weird, there is such a thing as a Barbie doll. So you know full well this sort of thing is normal. Alexia didn't like having this conversation in the middle of a public street, and she would be given a reason why in the form of a middle-aged woman tapping Elizabeth on the shoulder. "I'll pay you $2,000 for one of those dolls." Alexia was rendered speechless, while Beth was pleasantly flummoxed by the offer. "Deal." The lady looked at the princess. "Sorry dear, but my daughter in Orlando wants one of you bad." She pulled a checkbook out and wrote it up and traded it for one of the dolls. Seeing that the alicorn was too stunned to stop them, a dozen more people lined up by the car, all of them offering exorbitant sums of money. Beth was only too happy to oblige. Toon recovered after the second sale and growled in exasperation and teleported the foals and herself to the roof of the post office. "Well, this is just great. I ask Beth to come over here to take a job as an intern scientist and she comes here as a toy maker." She wanted to slump to the ground at not being able to find a fitting and unflattering term for her supposedly dear sister. Instead she kicked the gravel stones around. "I should have seen this coming. Beth was always conniving at making a buck when she's broke." With Dusty secure in her kinesis and her daughters strapped to the harness, the alicorn flew over to the edge of the building to wait out the impromptu auction Beth set up around the 8 dozen people who were trying to buy an Alexia doll. "I hope the cops get over here and break this up soon." 10 minutes later, the police came and tactfully ended the auction and 10 people walked away with empty wallets and arms full of cotton. Elizabeth pocketed the checks in her small purse and was thumbing her wad of cash with a massive grin when her sister glided down so she could let the whimpering foals out of the harness so they could run free. "You know we could make a huge toy line with you as the flagship." "You can forget it," Alexia blustered as she took half of the money in her magic and put them into the diaper bag. Elizabeth tried to grab the fleeing bills, but to no avail. "What the hell, sis?" Toon huffed. "I'm just taking my cut of your ill-gotten gains. You're using my image after all. Just be glad I don't take some of the checks too." Beth quickly deposited the rest of the cash in her purse. "So hey, why don't you show me your pad? I bet you got like a 1,000,000-square-foot mansion around here." Alexia magically pulled Dusty from scampering into the street and directed him towards his sisters. "Why? You going to point out how much of an ecological disaster it is?" Beth gave her older sister a superior smirk. "That is why you offered me a job here, right? To study the ecological impact of pony magic farming." The mayor scoffed. "You're here to intern for Dr. Paler, who's doing that. You're far too young to be a project lead." Now, Elizabeth was insulted. 17 is not too young. "I'll have you know I was chairman of your high school echo team." "Yes, I know," she interrupted with a pseudo-mocking grin. "That hardly qualifies against a doctorate." She hated to admit it, but her big sister was right. She pouted in defeat. Yeah. Fine. Hey, at least you got me in. Do you want to use your car or mine?" "Yours. I don't use mine in town." Beth popped the door locks with the key remote to let Alexia put the foals in the back. "So what? Do you run everywhere?" Toon's voice was muffled by the car as Beth walked to the other side. "Either that or fly. I have to keep in shape with what exercise I can." Plus Toon blinked in a flash of light and reappeared in the passenger seat. "I have that too." To say Beth was jealous would be a gross understatement. However, she was not jealous enough to put up with a tail and fur. Far too much maintenance work if you ask me. And the idea of depersonalized bathing, just you. And I quite like my hands where they are, thank you very much. She slid into the seat and started the engine. "Well, lead the way. The sooner you show me that environmental disaster you call a home, the quicker I can make it greener." Toon rolled her eyes, but was in truth glad to have Elizabeth around. "All right, just keep it real slow and careful. You don't have any child seats, and the kids don't like being buckled in." As the car drove off to the west, Alexia kept a loose kinetic hold over the foals who were either crying, spouting random words while sucking his hoof, or trying to eat her sister's ear? Why do you keep eating her ear, you purple cannibal? The alicorn cast an eye to her own sister from time to time, a thin smile crawled its way to her cheeks. I'm really glad you're here, sis, she said at length. Beth took a stoplight as an opportunity to look over at the silver alicorn. A toothy grin on her face. I am too. She gave the pony a quick hug before the light change. After a few moments, she saw Alexia doting on the three foals to keep Sky from hitting Violet for constantly biting her ear. At the same time, she pulled a chocolate chip cookie from the diaper bag and broke it in 3 pieces for each child. You've really thrown yourself into motherhood, haven't you? The alicorn raised a sarcastic eyebrow. Is it that obvious? And here I was trying to be subtle. Okay, smart ass, Beth jabbed her playfully before her face went flat. You know I support you and all, but it's still weird to see my former brother, a mother. Ugh. Just the thought of James not only getting it on, she cut that train of thought off at the pass before the mental images could assail her. So I get the impression you're living the good life now. She wanted her mind to get as far away from the image of her ponified sibling from having intercourse as possible. The foals finished the cookie pieces in short order, with Spark finishing first. Sky was actually trying to make the cookie last, but that prompted her sister to try and take it. The alabaster filly started pushing the purple one away so she couldn't steal her treat. No. Alexia grinned at the baby babble and pulled Violet off of Sky and gave her a teething toy. The purple filly ignored it for the sake of the cookie. The silver mare relented and broke a second cookie apart and gave a piece to each foal. None of them had any real control over their hooves gripping magic yet, so they had to use both legs to keep the pastries from falling. It has its perks, Alexia answered after almost waiting too long. But I get the feeling the good life won't stay all good for long. Beth stopped at another light. An intense look of concern washed over her at her sister's foreboding tone. What's that supposed to mean? Toon's eyes hovered over the children. You know I can't tell you about work, aside that it's both legal and dangerous. At times anyway. And with the way the world's going to shit, she looked at Beth for a long time. I wanted to make sure you were safe on the West Coast. Beth was starting to get a little more than just concerned. Why is the West Coast safer than any other part of the US? Alexia hated having to keep the media's truth and the CIA's truth separate from her last remaining human family member. You've seen the news. Africa's one step away from going feral. Asia's not looking good either, and the rest of world, us included, is in hot water. Were it not for the alicorn's direness, Beth would have brushed it off as fear-mongering. What exactly are you trying to say? What kind of work do you really do? I'm a part-time politician for the town and a training instructor, nothing more. Toon felt bad for being so good at half-lying. But I'm trying to say is, be safe, here in Trinity. Or at least remain west of the Rockies. Beth parked in front of the estate. A grim look was plastered over her features. Sure, sis. But promise me one thing. The mare's partially haunted gaze told the younger sister that she should take the warning very seriously. I can try. Beth's grimace deepened. Promise me that whatever you do out there, you come home safe too. With our parents no longer wanting to be our parents, you're all I've got left too. Both adults unbuckled their seat belts so they could share in a tense hug. I promise, Beth. The young woman wished her sister would be capable of upholding that promise. I'll hold you to that. Author's note. Just in case anyone is wondering/worried, no, there will not be another time anytime soon. Except for something short like a day or a few hours. End author's note. End chapter 1. Calm days and storm clouds.